right, and Hannah, if you give me the thumbs up when we are live. Hannah, if you give me the thumbs up when we are live. Welcome to Love and Arms. I am Chartrina White, the Executive Director. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Hannah, give me the thumbs up when we are live. Welcome to Love and Arms. That's better. We're going to start over. Welcome to Love and Arms. I'm Chartrina White, the Executive Director. Thank you so much for joining us tonight in celebration of 5 years of spreading ahimsa, nonviolence to all beings through compassion, supported by our 4 pillars of connection, education, inspiration, and action. Tonight, we hope you learned something new. You feel more closely connected to residents, our animals, and to the Love and Arms community. And mostly, we hope you're inspired to take action. It's only with your help that we can create a more compassionate world. You can support Love and Arms, all of our residents, compassionate businesses, artists, and caring individuals by registering for our 5th annual gala. So many people have generously given of their money, time, and talent so that our wider community can become involved in the mission of Love and Arms. So please go to loveandarms.org, find the tab 2020 Gala, and register. Make sure you do the second step. You download the Givey app because you can't participate without the app. Anything you donate will be matched, will be doubled. So it's really crucial that you get your donations in. It's so important that everything that you do, your generosity is going to be doubled. On Saturday, the virtual gala will be, so we all welcome you to that. Again, you have to have the Givey app to participate. We're so looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. Now, it is truly my privilege to introduce John Oberg. John Oberg is an animal activist and social media influencer and professional dedicated to making the world a kinder place for animals by utilizing the power of social media. In 2019, he launched his own independent, patron-funded project for animals through Patreon to maximize his impact for animals. Previously, he served as director of the new media for the International Animal Protection Organization, the Humane League, and as director of communications for Vegan Outreach. In 2019, he had 200 million impressions of his content on social media. Please support John also by going to www.patreon.com, John Oberg. John, welcome to Love and Arms. Thank you so much for presenting us tonight. We certainly can use all of this information.
Trina, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I am excited to be here and to be with your supporters and to hear about all the great work that you're doing. Love and Arms does a fantastic job of not just caring for the animals that they have, but also inspiring people around the globe to live and eat more compassionately. And I've been a big fan of your work for a long time. And I think that you also are somewhat unique and advanced in the sense that you really take social media seriously and really do a fantastic job of amplifying these animal stories and really encouraging people to see these animals up close and personal, and then to take that information and to be inspired by it and to live and eat in a different way. So I'm honored to be here with you and to be with everybody.
Thank you. So tell me, John, how do you, what's the best, if somebody wants to use social media as a platform to do activism and to create a kinder world, what are some of the first suggestions that you tell for somebody getting started?
Yeah, so social media, I think, first of all, we need to understand the power of social media. And a lot gets talked about the negativity and the negative impacts of social media. And social media is certainly not without its downsides. And there are a lot of downsides, some of which are it can become divisive. It can divide people. It can put us into little silos where we just get caught up engaging with people who already are like us and then you're not exposed to new ideas, and then you feel more hardened in your own ideas, and that's problematic. But overall, I think that the democratization of information that social media provides and the real global reach that's possible really breaks down so many barriers, and I think is going to be one of the biggest reasons that there's lots of positive change for animals and for reducing all suffering across all areas of suffering around the world. So social media is super important, and it's great because it's almost exclusively free, and it's to anybody with internet access around the globe. And so many people have social media right at their fingertips, and this opportunity to reach so many people globally. And if you use social media well, you can really amplify your voice. So in person to person outreach, there's sort of a limit as to what you can do. Yeah, maybe you can have dozens of conversations in a day, maybe hundreds if you're really good at it. But with social media, you can reach thousands, tens of thousands, even more. I've had days where I've reached millions of people in just a single day of effective advocacy on social media. And I should note that I'm not a magician. I don't have a PhD in social media science. I'm just a regular person who looked at the power of social media and kind of formed my approach over time, looking at what's been working on social media, what hasn't been working, kind of adjusting over time. And that's something that every animal advocate can do. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so the first point to remember is that social media is important. And then second of all, you need to remember that social media is something that you need to, it's a monster you have to constantly feed. It's not just something you jump on, you post once a week, and then you leave. It's lots of engagement. It's lots of building up your profile, building up your following base, and lots of engagement over time. And then it's also, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I mentioned that earlier, and I really believe that you can look at other social media accounts out there, see how they're having success in reaching a large number of people, and go from there. And fortunately, as animal advocates, we have this built-in thing going for us, and that's the fact that everybody loves animals, right? Nobody wants to support animal abuse. Nobody. Like, okay, maybe like a few sociopaths out there, but like over 99% of the population opposes animal cruelty. Unfortunately, as all of us here know, that the vast majority of human beings are actively making decisions that are going against this idea and that are causing suffering and causing cruelty. And so that actually gives us a huge opportunity as advocates to raise awareness and to get people to realize, hey, the choices that I'm making are doing things that I really don't want to pay someone else to do. So therefore, if I make different choices, I'm not going to be contributing to this cruelty, not going to be contributing to this suffering.
So you raised so many wonderful questions. So as an organization, as Love and Arms is trying to promote ahimsa and trying to promote nonviolence, we have so many amazing volunteers in our community and who come out here and spend time and are really committed to Love and Arms. How do we help them with content and to spread the word? Like, how do we help the people who are connected to Love and Arms do social media? And what do we start with? Do we start with Facebook, Instagram? What do we help them with?
So you and your volunteers are in real luck, and that's because you are an animal sanctuary. So you literally have endless access to content that's going to perform well on social media. And I should note that I've posted several Love and Arms videos to my Twitter and also Facebook and Instagram, but especially Twitter, and they have performed so well. They've been seen millions of times. So millions of times. So what's great is that like these animals that live on your sanctuary have been seen so many times, which means you're creating so much inspiration. And for all the volunteers who have physical access to these animals, as long as it's safe and mutually beneficial. If they can get footage of these animals doing cute things, doing funny things. Like I saw the other day, you posted a video of them licking a salt lick. Like that's adorable. People want to see that. And so if you can get as much of this content out there as possible, that's hugely successful. And I believe that the footage of happy animals is the most important thing that animal sanctuaries bring to the animal rights movement. And that is because you have the opportunity that so many people don't have of highlighting the impact or highlighting the joy that animals can feel, the happiness that they can experience. And that is something that they do not experience on factory farms and slaughterhouses around the world. And so the majority of the footage out there is that we care about is really sad stuff. And so
Right.
you have this unique opportunity to bring a happier element and to really inspire lots of people. And so obviously the sanctuary, but all the volunteers could definitely do this. As far as which platforms to focus their energy, I believe that you need to identify which platforms you find to be most valuable, but also which you feel most comfortable with, and so divide the resources that you have based on that. So if you have 10 hours a week that you can dedicate to social media, maybe spend 4 hours on Facebook, 3 hours on Instagram, and 3 hours on Twitter. Maybe different numbers or different proportions, but kind of divide your energy among different platforms, and then see what works. If you are reaching hundreds of people on Facebook, but 2 people on Twitter, maybe it's not worth it to dedicate your time on Twitter. Obviously, there's, it's long and complicated how you build these platforms up and how you get the most value you can out of them. And that's I'm sure we'll cover some of that, but certainly look at where you can get the most value and biggest impact for animals on these platforms.
And so animals, so them doing cute things, like you said, like a salt lick or playing together. Are there other things that you have found really work with as far as the types of pictures, the types of videos that really connect most?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, the important thing to remember is that your audience wants variety. They don't want the same things over and over and over. So as much as you can, incorporate variety into your social media streams, the better. So obviously, the vast majority of the content that you're going to be posting is going to be happy content, right? Well, you can still, implement different kinds of happy content. So make sure you're doing a variety of different kinds of animals. So don't just always do a chicken or always do a cow. Mix the different kinds of animals up. Go from just showing a 6-second cute clip to maybe a longer video that's telling more of an animal story. Incorporate video and content of your supporters and your volunteers, really engaging. Do some testimonials from individuals. Take some videos yourself of talking about the animals, and get some video and content from people who have been inspired by the animals on your sanctuary, and let them tell a story about how they used to eat animals, then they visited your sanctuary, and now as a result they stopped eating animals, and let that inspire other people.
Great idea. So we also have YouTube.
Great.
So YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Help me figure out what do you stick on each platform?
Yeah, so I know we're live on YouTube right now, which is great.
Right.
And yeah, and so it's certainly it's not an easy answer, because some of this has to do with your resources at hand, and also the value that you get out of certain platforms. So like I know that you guys spend a lot more time on Instagram than on Twitter. For me, Twitter is my most impactful platform, and so I spend more time on Twitter than Instagram. So it's no real easy answer as far as which you focus your energies on. But as far as some things to keep in mind is that Facebook and Twitter have the share button. Well, Facebook, it's the share button. On Twitter, it's called the retweet button.
Right.
Instagram, there's no share function. And so essentially with Instagram, you're speaking to a captive audience who have already chosen, they've already opted in to seeing your content. With Facebook and Twitter, if you use it well, you can get a lot of people sharing your content. And then a whole audience of people who haven't subscribed to your content, you haven't hit that follow button, are seeing your content. And the more shares that content gets, the further away it is from the base. And so maybe initially it's mainly vegan activists who are seeing your content. But as it gets more and more shares, it's a larger and larger portion of those shares are non-vegans. And of course, it's very important for us to reach non-vegans because those are the people who are every day making choices that are causing cruelty and causing suffering, whether they want to or not. That's what they're doing when they're choosing to, eat some chicken wings off the menu or buying beef at the grocery store. They're causing suffering. And so those are the people that we need to reach. And the share button is so, so important in that sense. So for that reason, although, my personal favorite platform is Instagram, I love jumping on there because it offers a very consistent feel. It's pretty simplified. It's very easy to find niche communities and find things with hashtags and so on. I do enjoy Instagram, but I find there to be significantly more value as an animal advocate who's trying to reach as many non-vegans as possible on Twitter and Facebook.
So let's take Facebook to start with. Creating an effective post on Facebook that gets shared. Is there magic formulas? Is there like things to say? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what do you put in do you have to be careful about how you it, and then you put the cute picture in or the cute video? So like, what really seems to be working formula wise on Facebook?
So the downside of social media is that the landscape is always shifting, right? So you're always dealing with a shifting landscape and things are always changing. So there is no magic formula. And on top of this, there's no magic formula because these social media accounts and companies, they don't want people exploiting their system. So, I miss the days like 8 years ago when you have a chronological feed, right? So you can kind of hack the system by just posting a lot because you're always gonna be seen first in the news feed. Those days are gone. Now we have this algorithm to deal with, and you have to be scoring well in the algorithm in order to have your content be seen. So you have to deal with the things that these social media landscapes throw at you and how it's always changing. So that being said, what I really recommend doing is paying attention to what's working and paying attention to what's not working. Also, see what your competitors are doing. See what, luckily as an animal sanctuary, you have tons of other animal sanctuaries out there. And yes, we're all on the same team, but they are competitors in a sense. And so it's important to look at how they're performing and what kind of content they're posting and how they're framing captions, how they're cropping images, what they're doing with their video content. Are they short little clips or are they longer form video? Are they things with a lot of production value or are they things that are just been filmed on their cell phone camera? Pay attention to these different things and see what's working for them and see what's not working for them and really learn from that. And then as you are paying attention to this, do the same thing to your own social media content. So whether you are running the Loving Arms Facebook page or whether you have your own Facebook page, whether a personal or public page, pay attention to what kind of content your audience engages with and go from there.
Excellent. And then I also want to say, so I am full of questions just because I'm very fascinated by all this, but please, anyone else, and especially Hannah, but anyone else on this call, or if, I don't know if anybody's monitoring YouTube, if there are questions on there, Ashley, if you can look at that so that other people can ask questions, because social media is always, seems like such a mystery.
It is a mystery.
Right? So it's really great to have you here to talk about it. Twitter, I can honestly say I have an account and that's it. Help me get started.
Okay, sure.
Right?
And before,
yeah, just
sorry,
help me get started. What do I do?
Okay. Before I talk about Twitter, I do want to very quickly just give a shout out to Hannah, who is on this call. Hannah was my intern for a long time back in my days at the Humane League, and she was one of the most standout interns I've ever had, and it was such a benefit to have her around. And she's done so much incredible work behind the scenes. And she is a big reason that a lot of really important content has been seen millions of times. So if we can all just at home give a little round of applause for Hannah. She's an amazing human being who's done a lot of good work for animals.
And
So
I'm just going to double and triple and quadruple that. We love Hannah, and everybody, a lot of people's like, they don't realize we have two Hannahs here, right? So they always see Hannah, the caregiver, and they're like, who does social media? I'm like, Hannah, she's brilliant. Hannah. And they're like, we've never seen her. So now you get to see Hannah, everyone. Hannah is on the call tonight. Hannah, say hello so everybody can see your face at least.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. You guys are too kind. Hello.
That's Hannah, everyone.
cool. So thank you again, Hannah. And to go on your question about Twitter, how do you get started? So yeah. Twitter, there's something to keep in mind is that Twitter, it's really, really hard to build up a base organically. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. And so, and it's harder nowadays than it ever has been. You have so much competition out there. So I'm not saying, you know, for me, I find the most value with Twitter, but I'm not saying that's necessarily going to be the case for all the animal advocates out there. So I would really recommend kind of splitting your time up between different platforms and seeing what works. And I do recommend spending your time on different platforms, because if you invest all of your time and energy and resources into one platform, and then that platform stops being popular, you have just kind of pigeonholed yourself. And now you're, you know, like what's the point of having 1 million MySpace followers, right? MySpace has been popular for 14 years. And so it's very important to kind of spread your time out. And so a new and emerging platform out there is TikTok. So I would love to see animal advocates doing more work on TikTok. I personally haven't done much on TikTok. I created one. If anyone wants to follow me, my handle is just at John Oberg. I've made one stupid video and I haven't touched it since. But for animal advocates out there who are looking to explore their options on social media and beyond, I would recommend getting involved with TikTok. But to come back to your question about Twitter, again, the same thing applies to what I was saying before, is that you really need to recognize and see what's working and what isn't working for your competitors and for yourself. One thing I will say is that video content works really well. And when I say video content, I really mean low-key video content, not necessarily highly produced content. So it's kind of the reverse of what people would think. Excuse me. People would often think that a video of a cow licking a salt lick is cool, but like a really detailed video about maybe an animal story is like 10 times better. So it's going to perform 10 times as well. What you might find is that the salt lick video performs 10 times as well. And some, I would say this isn't fair, but this is the landscape that we have to deal with. And so we have to kind of accommodate accordingly. And we need to focus on the content that's going to perform well. And so for me, I do a blend, probably 40% happy content, 40% sad content, and 20% other content, often, relating to me and my work, doing media and stuff like that. But it's important to have a blend, but video content is the best place to get started. And another thing I'll say, maybe we'll touch on this later, but I think it's really important to mention, this is applicable to Twitter, but all social media platforms, is that any animal advocates out there who want to take their social media game seriously, I highly, highly recommend scheduling posts in advance rather than posting natively every day. It's not a great use of your time to wake up every day and think, okay, what am I going to post to social media? And sit there and think about it and stress about it and do this day in and day out. It's exhausting. What's much better is to use all your creativity at once and schedule posts in advance for a week or two. I usually schedule posts about 2 weeks in advance, and it's really nice because then in the 2 weeks I can jump onto social media and engage with my followers, the people who are replying to me, the people who are retweeting my content. But I'm not focusing every day, okay, what am I going to post? And the benefit to that is that you can more easily plan out your schedule and have a more cohesive sense, have a more cohesive, going strategy if you're going from post to post to post, rather than, forgetting what you posted yesterday and not planning for what you're going to post tomorrow.
So that brings up a really good question. as an executive director, right? So we have our plan post, but you know, as a sanctuary, things come up, like things happen. So that would be great to post at the time that it's happening. So what do we do in that case? Do I, on my personal, you know, page, post that and we just keep our scheduled post? Or do we at Love and Arms, who has, you know, obviously way more followers? Like how do we deal with the dynamics of everyday life that sometimes things need to, you know, get posted?
Oh, good question. So scheduling posts is great, but it takes a backseat to important content, breaking news. So there would be almost no situation where you'd be like, oh, well, this post is already scheduled. I'm going to let it go live. If you have something more important to post, maybe something breaking news, maybe like there's been some wildfires and you need to rescue some animals, or something like that. Maybe an animal has some sort of injury, and you want to have a GoFundMe to raise money for them. Things like that. Like these are obviously, these take priority and precedence. So I would then reschedule the posts that are already scheduled to go up. So this is just kind of like a good backup plan, is scheduling posts. And I will give a shout out to Buffer. Buffer is my favorite. I use Buffer just about every day. Well, not every day because I don't schedule posts every day. But when I do schedule posts every few days or every week or two, I use Buffer. And it's very, very user friendly, simplified, and it's pretty cheap. So they have a free plan where you can post it scheduled to 10. The paid, I think, is like $15 for like 100 posts. Well worth the investment.
So if we have volunteers out there who want to really up their social media game, Buffer works on what platforms?
Very good question, Fortrina, because it works on a public Facebook page, not your personal Facebook page. And I know that our personal Facebook page is often our first Facebook advocacy tool. So if you don't have a public page, it's not relevant. It works on anybody's Twitter account, which is nice. Then Instagram, it only works if you have a business account rather than a personal account. This may have changed recently. I heard some rumblings about it possibly of changing. So I could be wrong about that. But as far as I know, it'll work for an Instagram business account. And it's as simple as just going to your settings and clicking a button to switch from personal to business.
On Instagram.
On Instagram, correct.
Okay.
And there's other platforms too that it works on. Those are just the three main platforms that I focus the majority of my efforts on, which is why I mentioned those.
So Buffer works in that way for business accounts, except for Twitter. Anybody can use Buffer for, and possibly Instagram if we switch over to a business account.
Yeah. You should have a business account already because you are an animal sanctuary, not a person.
We do. Yes. Yeah. So what about how much to post, right? So do we post, do you know what I mean? And as an individual, if we're talking about our volunteers about helping us do advocacy work through social media, how often is a good time to post? Do we post every day? You said feed the monster, I think it was.
Yeah, that's a good question because it is absolutely a monster that you have to feed, and part of that feeding requires lots of posts.
Right.
So there's kind of a general rule of thumb with some, like Instagram, like the more you post, the better. At the same time, though, you get to a point where you have you have diminishing returns, so you don't want to post too much, but also a large requirement of resources. And I don't know what your situation is at Love and Arms, but I know that a lot of animal sanctuaries out there and organizations in general, they don't have a large social media team. They might have one person, maybe two people, maybe only half of one person, only 20 hours a week, maybe. So if that's the case, then you don't necessarily have a ton of energy to put to this. So you don't have the resources to post 5 times a day. So do what you can within reason, but also it goes back to that old thing I was talking about earlier, how you have to see what's working. And you might post 3 times a day on Instagram and see that you're only getting, let's say you're getting average like 300 likes per post. But when you post once or twice a day, you're getting double that or triple that. Then maybe it's better to post less often. Sometimes less is more. So you really need to see what's resonating with your audience. And because social media pages vary so much in content and resources, there's really no hard and fast answer. It's really seeing tends to work the most and go from there. But a good rule of thumb is to also remember that sometimes less is more, and having good variety in your content as well. So don't always just post happy stuff over and over and over.
That's good to know. So I wanted to go back real quickly to TikTok, because I really don't know anything about TikTok, except maybe I've seen one video that I learned how to make a cool photograph, like a cool movie from, but that's it. That's my TikTok knowledge.
So you just want to talk about TikTok. So
I just want to know, you said get into that. So I just how do we use that? What is it? And how is that content different? And the other thing is, with the other platforms, are there demographics to each of the platforms, right? Is there a certain demographic that overall that they've showed that Facebook reaches versus Twitter, age wise, education wise, what are the demographics of each of the different platforms?
So I'd like to preface this with stating the fact that it's really important for us to focus on younger people as animal advocates, and that's multiple reasons for that. For one, they're more open to new ideas than older people. Number two, they often, at least for college kids, are often out there buying their own food for the first time, and then for three, they have larger social networks that they can influence others on. And then number four, they have more years of purchasing power in front of them. So for those four reasons, it's very important that we focus on a younger generation when possible. That being said, I think it's very important to reach everybody. And if you look at the demographics of different platforms, Facebook does skew older and older. That being said, it's by far is it not important. It's still very, very important. You can still reach lots and lots of people on Facebook, even if they're slightly older than the demographics on the other accounts. And that's because of the share button. The share button really is an underappreciated tool of the animal advocacy movement. Twitter is kind of all over the place. Instagram does skew younger. TikTok even more so. So TikTok is great for that sense, and if you want to try and reach younger people. And I haven't used TikTok a ton myself, but what it is basically is a short form video platform that is structured in a way that's kind of addicting and also really fun, and it can really give people who don't have any video editing experience or skills the opportunity to create content that is actually interesting to watch. And it really matches up with people's very short attention span on social media. And so for all those reasons, it is pretty valuable. And I'd recommend using it. And again, fortunately, as an animal sanctuary, you have opportunities like most other animal advocates do not have. And that's, many, many animals who are living great, happy lives, who have really powerful, inspirational stories. And you can take their stories and you can tell those stories using great platforms like TikTok.
Yes. It feels like we need a full-time social media person, right, Hannah? Hannah, do you have some questions that you want to ask?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to hear from you, John, about metrics specifically, because if you think about, when you post something and, oh, this didn't get a ton of likes, but it got a lot of comments, but this one got a lot of likes and not a lot of comments. So what should we look for?
Yeah, I know you have lots of experience looking at those metrics. And it's really important to remember that we need to be focusing, paying attention to what's working and what's not, because social media is this huge opportunity. And as an animal sanctuary, you can reach, hundreds of thousands, millions of people over the course of a year. And so you really want to be focused, remembering that potential. And so how do you know what your impact is? By looking at the metrics. And social media platforms offer a ton of metrics out there, way more than you need. The things that you really should be paying attention to, and I'll just talk about Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter here. So Facebook, you want to pay attention to shares, comments, reactions, and reach. Okay. Luckily, all four of these kind of go hand in hand. So when you have a lot of comments, you'll generally have a lot of likes or a lot of shares and a lot of reach. And I should define this too as what reach is. But let me actually backtrack for a second. I'm getting a little bit in the weeds here, but essentially everything boils down to reach and engagement. So reach is how many people are seeing your content. Engagement is how are people engaging with your content. So how are people liking it, commenting, sharing? And essentially those two metrics are everything you need to pay attention to. So on Facebook, that looks like reach, how many people are seeing your posts, and then engagement, how many people are liking or reacting to your posts, commenting, and sharing. On Twitter, it's how many people are reaching your, how many people are seeing your posts, and then how many people are engaging. So how many people are liking that post, retweeting that post, replying to that post. And then you could take the retweets and look at them as quote retweets, where people actually add their own comment, and then simple retweets where they just simply click the retweet button. And then Instagram, you don't have a share button, which again, I think is really unfortunate for our cause. And so, but you do still want to pay attention to the reach, because sometimes you can reach people who don't already follow you through a variety of ways. So you do want to pay attention to reach, but also really a bit more on engagement. So see if people are liking your posts and commenting. And fortunately, the best way to do that with Instagram is on a desktop or a laptop or whatever, go to the Instagram at hand and just kind of like hover your mouse or hover your cursor over each post, and it'll show you how many likes and how many comments and how many views if it's a video. And that's really convenient to very easily, quickly see what kind of content is performing well. And the last thing I'll say about that is all three of those platforms, plus pretty much all other social media platforms out there, provide a ton of analytics and data that break down metrics very closely. And so you can very much easily have access to so much content out there.
Yeah, that's definitely helpful. I feel like metrics can be very overwhelming for sure when people are first starting, especially with social media, because it's just a lot.
Yeah.
Something else that I think would be interesting for you to talk about is the algorithm and its changes and keeping up with that, because yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. So again, to kind of explain what the algorithm is for the viewers here who aren't super familiar with how the algorithm works. So social media platforms generally have an algorithm, and that is basically a computer mathematical formula to figure out what people want to see. And why does this exist? Okay, a couple of reasons. So for one, back in the day, like maybe 8-9 years ago, on social media platforms, there was a chronological feed. So when you posted something, it went right to the top of the news feed for all of your followers to see. Well, people exploited that by posting a lot, and that's problematic to have people exploiting that. Additionally, the problem with that setup was that you're just seeing whatever people will randomly be posting, and it might not be something that you're terribly interested in. And why does that matter? Because these social media platforms make money on advertising, and that means they want you staying on their platform for as long as possible. And how do they get you to stay on the platform? By trying to show you content that they think you're interested in. And so it's us versus the algorithm. It's animal advocates versus the algorithm. It's love and arms versus the algorithm. And so as we are fighting this algorithm, we need to do everything we can to get ourselves to score well in the algorithm. And it isn't a person pulling, a puppet master pulling some strings. It is a mathematical formula, essentially, that you have to figure out what kind of content is going to perform well and what isn't. And you don't need to do any complex math here. I don't want to make it seem too overwhelming. Essentially, all you need to do is look at what's working for yourself and see what's not working for yourself. Do more of what's working and less of what's not. And look at your competitors as well. And then if you want to go even further, look at what similar people in different fields are doing. So for example, you could look at what other animal sanctuaries are doing well, maybe not doing so well, but then also look at the environmental movement, see what Greenpeace or other like environmental organizations are doing and what's working well for them and what's not working well for them. So these are different ideas that you can kind of implement to try and figure out what's going to be most successful.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's definitely helpful for everyone because I think it can be very confusing. I mean, I still am confused a lot about it.
And to add on that too, like the algorithm does change over time for a variety of reasons. So again, Facebook doesn't, and other social media platforms, they don't want people exploiting these. But also they think, okay, you know what, we kind of want to value some things more. Like, for example, a few years ago, Facebook decided kind of out of the blue that they wanted to prioritize friends and family posts over pages. And that really was unfortunate for a lot of pages. I think we were working with, I was at the Humane League at the time, and I think you were on the team or around that time, and like we saw a real decline in reach, and that means a decline in impact for animals. And so we need to recognize when that happens and figure out how can we change our message in a way that works. And unfortunately, a lot of it's out of our hands. We're kind of at the mercy of these platforms, but we can do everything we can within reason to try and maximize our impact.
Yeah, Facebook is always changing their algorithm. I feel like our social media, I'm always like trying to figure it out because sometimes we'll post, multiple times a day and it'll just tank everything. And then I'm just like, it's so hard to figure it out.
Well, it's great you're paying attention though, and you're not just jumping on, posting once a day and jumping off. It's good you're paying attention to this because this is what's really going to give you a heads up and a leg up.
I have a question. I'm interested in the metrics, and it seems that everything you're saying, it seems really laborious. I mean, it seems like you're saying that you need to look at these posts and analyze them, and then you have to go to this person or another page and analyze theirs. And are there reports and statistics that you can grab for these various platforms?
Great question, Kathleen. I would love to clarify that I'm trying to make it as unlaborious as possible. I think that it's actually, these platforms offer you a lot of metrics and information that can make it seem laborious, but it's not that complex. All you need to be doing is looking at what's working for you and what isn't. And that just means don't just schedule 2 weeks of posts and not jump on there. Jump on every day, pay attention, make it an effort. So for the social media manager, have them check the social media platforms 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day and look at how much engagement your posts are getting. And you will develop this kind of sixth sense that really tells you, okay, this content is probably going to perform well. This content isn't going to perform well. So it comes down to numbers and data, but a lot of it's just right up here, given time. So over time, you will definitely learn that. And so you don't need to set up massive spreadsheets and flow charts and all this stuff. Really just pay attention to what's working and what isn't working. It all comes down to that.
Thanks. I had another question. I know some of the platforms have the opportunity for people to say they want to see a certain page's post for sure, or first, or whatever how do you build people to get on your bandwagon like that?
How do you get people to click see first for your page?
Yeah.
You ask them to, and you can do that in a variety of ways. So for one, if you're going to ask them to do that, don't just make a text only post, because nobody's going to engage with that post. Okay. Nobody's going to see that in their newsfeed and be like, oh, that's a cool post. I'm going to like that post. I'm going to love that post. I'm going to share that post. Nobody really cares about this text only post that you've created. So nobody's going to engage. And if nobody engages, coming back to the algorithm here, you're scoring poorly in the algorithm. Facebook's not going to show that content in the news feed. And so you kind of want to sneak it in there. So maybe you could post that video of the cows eating this, licking the salt lick. And then at the bottom of the caption, be like, if you want to see more content like this one, make sure to click the see first button, so that you can stay in contact. Also, you can do DMs. So direct message your followers and tell them, hey, thanks so much for following the page. We really appreciate your support. If you want to stay up to date on all the stuff that we have going on, click the see first button. Put that in your email newsletter so that all your people on the newsletter see it and have an opportunity of doing it. When you're doing like media like this, talk about it, use it as an opportunity to kind of get the word out.
Okay. It does seem like a lot, but I think, how do we then take social media, and so we want to create education, right? So that's one of our platforms, is to help with education. We want to engage people into our programming. And sometimes I think that, is there a way of engaging people in like what we're doing here with social media? Because that sometimes seems to be, I don't know, it doesn't seem to get as much attention as some of the other types of posts that we do.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the question is, Trina. I'm sorry. Would you mind asking that again?
Yeah. So our different types of posts, so we use social media for different reasons, right? Mm-hmm. One, to connect people to to inspire others to change, to educate, but also to engage them into what we're doing here physically, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes those posts, is there a better way to reframe them so that people are like, kind of like what Kathleen's saying, like say, oh my goodness, yes, there's something going on at Love and Arms, and to hit a local audience, or to hit our virtual audience too, because we also do virtual tours that we could literally go worldwide with. And how do we create that buzz around our virtual tours worldwide?
Well, yeah, it seems like you definitely have like a series of categories of kinds of posts.
Right.
And so again, a lot of it comes down to just seeing which categories tend to be high performers, and which categories seem to be lower performers. And naturally there's going to be, some that are higher performers than others. And don't get your feelings hurt by that. That's just kind of the rules of the game. So like, when I ran the social media for different nonprofit organizations, like, when it came down to fundraising time, like nobody wanted to engage with our fundraising posts. But I had to do the best I could because it was still important to get that information out there. And so what you might find over time is that some of the most important content is some of the content that people want to engage with the least, but then some of the least important content might get the most engagement. So
Right.
I like, for example, an animal doing a cute, like maybe a goat just jumping on something and then jumping off of something for like 6 seconds. Okay, that video might get seen hundreds of thousands of times. But then when it's like, your gala, or you have some sort of big event coming up, it might get 35 likes. And so that's the nature of social media. So it's just something you have to deal with. And my recommendation would be, have the less important but high engagement stuff as much of a part of your newsfeed as possible, and then sprinkle in the stuff that is more important to your mission, but it's going to get less engagement. Sprinkle that in between these other things that are more higher performers.
Okay. That sounds great. Hannah, are you ready to take on TikTok?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I like TikTok. I've seen some videos on there. It's pretty cool. So a lot of like kids in high school and stuff like making their own content. So it's definitely a really good way to reach them. I feel like Instagram was the way before, but now it's like even younger people on there. So I definitely think there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, it seems a little bit tough to I don't know. I've had some discussions, and it'll be a little bit tough to get animal advocacy on TikTok, particularly because I think the most important content that people can see are, one, the cruel reality that farm animals face and behind the closed doors of these factory farms and slaughterhouses, but then also the joy and happiness that farm animals can experience. So they're seeing their potential. I think that at least with that, there is some potential with TikTok. I think the first thing I mentioned, the sadder stuff, would be a little bit harder to translate, but fortunately for you all, you specialize in the happy stuff. So maybe you can work some magic there.
And John, so you deal with literally millions of people. How do you handle, and what do you give advice both to the volunteers and people watching? How do you handle negative feedback from post?
So do you mean trolls, people just being jerks?
Yes.
Oh, I embrace them. I love it. It's a good thing. Trolls, getting trolls. So for those of you who aren't familiar, trolls are basically just individuals who want to be jerks on your social media. And yes, walking down the street, there you probably wouldn't get trolled that much. Talking about animal advocacy, but people tend to get really brave when they get behind a computer or behind a phone. And so, proportionally, there's more trolls than there would be in real life. But hey, we have to deal with them. So if you're getting trolled, so if you're getting people, let's say, for example, you post a picture of a pig at Love and Arms, and somebody says, that looks like good bacon to me. Yes, you can react to that negatively, and you can be like really upset that they would ever say that. But a few things. So for one, you need to remember that they're actually helping you. How are they helping you? Because they're adding a comment to your post, and that's fooling Facebook's algorithm. And that's telling Facebook, hey, people are engaging with this post. We want to put it in the news feeds of more people. So it's actually beneficial. And so you can actually use that to your advantage. Maybe you wouldn't, but I certainly have definitely used, I kind of baited trolls a little bit in the past in order to exploit them into getting my content seen by more people. And so that's certainly a fun little strategy that you can do. But also, it's important to remember that for social media trolls out there is that they're in small numbers and they just have the loudest voice. And so, the way that human brain is wired is we often remember negative stuff 10 times, 100 times more than the good stuff. And so certainly it's not easy, but do your best to understand that people being jerks is actually, for every person who's a jerk to you, there's lots and lots of people who are actually being impacted by your work. And then lastly, as far as actually the logistical way of dealing with them, I will often reply to a troll and say something kind to them. I won't stoop to their level because that might make me feel good, but that's not going to do any good for animals. And all that matters at the end of the day is how we've impacted animals, not how we've impacted our ego, or whether or not we're liked by a bunch of vegans. That's not important. What's important is the work that we're doing for animals to reduce animal suffering. And so for that reason, I might reply to a troll and say like, oh yeah, I used to love bacon too. I used to eat it like 3 or 4 times a week. But then I learned how farm animals would be treated, and I thought, nah, that's not for me. But to each their own. Have a great day. And by saying this, you really bring their walls down. They really open up, and maybe they're a jerk back to you, just out of defensiveness. But it doesn't really matter. And what you need to remember as well is that the vast majority of users on social media are passive. They aren't engaging. So they aren't liking, commenting, sharing. They are simply viewing whatever is in their news feed. And so for every person who engages, there are many, many people who aren't. I think the number is like, for every person who's engaging, there's like 5 or 7 people who aren't engaging. And so those are opportunities when you're dealing with trolls to make a good impression on other people who are viewing that content, and also representing the vegan community well and representing the animal protection movement well.
are there things that we can add to our posts? Like obviously in Instagram, it's, hashtag various items. Are there things that you can do in Facebook and Twitter that the same thing, that people make it easier to search for topics, or that it's a good idea to do in a post?
So hashtags aren't used that too frequently on Facebook, so I avoid them. Sort of rare situations. Twitter, they use a little bit more, so maybe you could throw in a couple, but I would recommend letting them, only using them in two situations on Twitter, especially, but pretty much all platforms. And that's one, use them within a sentence. So you could post a picture of a suffering dairy cow, okay, and say, by going vegan, you help end this suffering, and hashtag the word vegan. And then alternatively, you can also end captions with a hashtag to kind of make a statement about something. So something I might do is do that same picture of a suffering dairy cow and say, this is what you support when you choose a glass of milk. Hashtag ditch dairy. So I don't think there's many people out there who are searching hashtag ditch dairy, but
Right.
it's a way to kind of make a statement about the content. So those are ideas for you right there.
Great ideas. Any other questions for me? John, you've given so much information that is actually really helpful for me. Unlike Hannah, I am not a social media guru, and I'm trying to get better at it. So this has been really helpful for me personally, and I hope for all the volunteers and other people who aren't like John and Hannah. But
Cool.
please feel free to ask questions. Anybody else that's out there, or Ashley, did you have any? Okay.
I have a real simple question. It just came to me. When I see my posts, I see views. And I've never really thought before until you brought this up, John. What does that mean? I mean, because obviously if I'm just scrolling through my news feed, I see a whole lot more than Facebook can know, unless they're really tracking me more than I know. What does a person have to do to be a view versus really engaging?
Well, a view is it's rated different, or it's defined differently on different platforms. Hannah, I know, I believe on Facebook it's like watching at least 3 seconds of a video. The numbers are different platforms. So yeah, and by no means do I equate one view of a video to someone going vegan, but it's a numbers game. So the more views content has, the more likely there are more people who are going to become vegan or become active or start donating to Love and Arms. So so that's kind of what you need to remember, to kind of take it with a grain of salt, but also remember that it's a numbers game. So the more impact, the bigger the numbers, the more impact you're making for animals.
All right. I'm ready to go out there to try it. And I hope all the volunteers will as well, because I think that um, there are a lot of vegan and vegetarians out there, and we don't have the loudest voices, and we're probably not doing enough on social media to try to reach others. So I think you're right. It's a wonderful platform, and that we should be spreading that content. If you have any other last words of wisdom, that would be great. But
Cool.
I just so appreciate you being willing to speak to us tonight, and to our audience, and for everybody to be able to learn to do more activism this way. And you're right, it's something we can do right from our own homes, especially those people. We have lots of content here. So I
Yeah.
really, yeah, yes, we do every day. So I really hope that everybody will take this information and use it as a platform to spread really compassionate work, and to help Love and Arms. And John, thank you so much. Again, John does everything that he does through Patreon, and Love and Arms as well. We do everything through donations. So I hope in some way you've been inspired, and that those of you who are watching join our Love and Arms Gala and support both Love and Arms and John. So thank you again, John, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks so much for having me, Trina. Thank you, everybody here, for being on the call and for all the great work that you and your supporters do. And looking forward to staying connected for the animals.
For the animals. Thanks, John.